Thanks everyone for coming tonight. Our speaker tonight does need no introduction. He's the archivist of the Save Acworth History Foundation, and he's going to talk to us about the story of Acworth education. Andrew Bramlett.
So for many people, schools play an integral part of how they come to meet others, socialize, and form a community identity. Because of this, schools play a very central role in local histories. We could be here for hours talking about Acworth school history, but if I don't want to be here past my bedtime, I know y'all don't, so we're not going to be doing that. For many people who also I know speak very fondly of their time in school, we have many great interviews with former principals, teachers, former students inside the Save Acworth collection. Today's presentation starts in the earliest days of Acworth and ends in the past 10 years. The most information available, but really good information, is in the 50s and 60s. That being said, because there's so much good info out there, and I know some of y'all even live some of that, I don't want to focus a huge amount on that particular era, because, I mean, it's just repeating stuff a lot of you already know. Instead, the focus will try to be on the really early stuff, early Acworth education, along a bit more recent history. You'll see what I mean at the very end of the presentation. This will be filled with stories you haven't heard of before, and school histories you're largely unfamiliar with. So to start with, I have antebellum education in Acworth. What was going on in Acworth before the Civil War? And my notes are a big question mark. I could barely find anything, disappointingly. I tried and tried and tried, and there just wasn't much to be found. I've searched in newspapers, I've searched some of the Save Acworth collection, I've looked on maps, there's not really a huge amount of info there. The best information I have is from November of 1865, when this article was placed in the Southern Recorder out of Milledgeville. An individual named only RGE said looking for a job as an assistant teacher in a college or good school, and that they were from Acworth, Georgia. I'm assuming this means it was a school of some kind, that they had a good enough education to be a college teacher, but I just can't figure it out. If anyone has any suggestions, please let me know. This is a big mystery to me, and I would love to solve it somehow. The book of Acworth's history done in the 70s by the Carrie Dyer Women's Club says that Acworth education dates back to either 1852 or 1868, which are very specific dates that I have not been able to verify yet. I'd love to know where they got those from. I mean, it's just one thing to say it dates back to the 1850s or 1860s. To have exact years seems like it had to come from somewhere. The oldest information I can find is Acworth High School. As early as 1870, Acworth was home to an institution called the Acworth High School. Newspaper accounts also mention a Cherokee High School very early on, but by a J.A. Carswell. What I haven't figured out yet is if these are the same school or two different high schools. I'm thinking they're the same. They seem to not really overlap with each other much, but I do want to mention that just in case. In 1874, the Acworth High School had almost 90 students and was described by the Narrator Journal in June of that year as a flourishing school. The building was a large brick structure believed to have been located on the site of today's McCall Primary School. The oldest mention of that building I have found is January 13th of 1871 in the Narrator Journal. The article mentions that the school was reopening, so presumably it was open the previous year. The Carrie Dyer Women's Club book traces, I already said that, my bad. In 1899, the school was renamed in honor of Smith Lemon, a local banker. A new building for the school was constructed in that year, and Lemon's widow, Hannah, laid the cornerstone for the new structure. He passed away, I believe, about 2 years before he left some money for this school. The Smith Lemon Institute building, sometimes erroneously called the Smith Lemon Institute of a hyphen, soon became a center of Acworth culture and society. Starting around 1911, the names Acworth High School and Smith Lemon Institute began to be used interchangeably. By about 1913, the Smith Lemon name was dropped seemingly entirely. This is another great photo of it. Both of these photos come from the Save Acworth History Foundation collection and show that original Smith Lemon building. And this may have also been used at one point by the Methodist church in town. I think it was this building. Here's another good one showing a bit more of a general view. And as I said, this is about where McCall Primary is today. We also recently, to plug Save Acworth here, had these wonderful storyboards which were recently placed about a year or so ago, including one talking about both Acworth Public Schools, where some of this presentation information came from, but also about Smith Lemon Building. One of the earliest teachers we have good information on is Kate Logan Good. She was of the Logan Fine family from just across the street. She was born in 1870 here in Acworth, and her family owned Logan Fine College. Her father was Harrison Logan. She was known as Miss Kate around Acworth, and worked as a school teacher for most of her life. She worked in cities across the state, including Dawson, Beaufort, and Greensboro. And this, I'm sure, quite charming town named Asbestos, Georgia. I've not quite figured out where Asbestos was yet, so another interesting mystery to solve.
For what?
I found with her, she worked mostly in like small schools across the state, somewhere in towns like Dawson and Beaufort and Greensboro, which are still around, still pretty active. There were a few references to places like Asbestos. I can't figure out where that is yet, but I'm sure it's a wonderful place. In June of 1920, she married J.E. Good of Cedartown, who was a few years older than her. About 2 months after their wedding, he actually passed away. I believe it was natural causes, and she came back to Acworth soon afterwards. She spent about 20 years after that teaching at the Acworth schools, retired in 1946. She would frequently travel to visit family, particularly in South Carolina, and passed away in 1964. Recently, a relative of hers gave a massive collection of her personal items to the Save Acworth History Foundation, which I'm still working through, but have a lot of great information, including from a set they gave a few years ago, some of the earliest land deeds we have for Acworth. They have one original Cherokee land lottery deeds that was from her family, which have been really, really exciting. One of the most interesting schools to me is the Independent Normal School. I'm going to spend a disproportionate amount of time on this because I find it really cool, but here it goes. This is sort of in town lower, like the Carrie Dyer book is known as the college. I don't know if it was actually a college level institution, maybe more of a high school level. It seems to kind of been a little bit of both. It's like a fuzzy line between them. The earliest mention of the Independent Normal School is from the July 4th, 1889 edition of the Atlanta Constitution. The article describes a new school building to be built by N.E.W. Stokely at a cost of $5,000. It would be located near the Mineral Park and will be a big thing in our town, according to the paper. It was the hope of Acworth residents that the school would relieve some burden of the overrun of high school. Even though it is called the college in some accounts, that's why I believe it may have actually been a high school level institution, because it was relieving students from a high school. An article from the Constitution of December 7th, 1890, says it was the only distinctive normal school in the state, essentially it was a teacher's college. Later that year, the first pupils were ready to attend. The correspondent for the Oregon region of Cobb County, who was only named Sword, said on November 7th that a number of young men from here and also from Lost Mountain were getting ready to attend the school. Sadly, apparently some came to regret this decision. By January 23rd of 1890, the paper's Lost Mountain correspondent was saying that the school was overrun by measles. It said measles scattered promiscuously over the county, seemingly originating inside this school. An article on Acworth for the October 15th, 1889 Kennesaw Gazette, which is a very good publication, said the school was a big step educationally, reflecting great credit upon the people and their spirit of liberty and progressiveness. The article also mentioned courses which were offered, which were a high school dictionary, English grammar, geography, history, higher arithmetic, word analysis, rhetoric, physiology, penmanship, algebra, surveying, bookkeeping, reading, training, and normal methods. They also were hoping to add in some more practical classes, according to them, such as typewriting and telegraphy. They included art in that category. The demand wasn't quite yet sufficient for that. Next to the school, a normal hotel was built, while separate buildings for music, telegraphy, etc. would be erected as demanded. The location instead was at the Mineral Well, and the land was given by Jesse Lemon, adjacent to the school, for use as a park. By December of 1890, this Mineral Park Hotel seems to have been open, cost only $10 a month for boardings, which seems like a great deal. The same article mentions that photography was taught at normal school, which is not very surprising. N.E.W. Stokely founded the school. His brother was a photographer. In fact, we have some very good early photos of both Kennesaw and Acworth taken by J.C. Stokely. The youngest pupils at the school that I have found mention of were only 10 years old, which I know I said fuzzy line between high school and college, seemingly also middle school. I don't know what to make of all this. According to the Constitution, Atlanta Constitution, votes per month were as follows. Literary and business was $3, telegraphy was $5, stenography and typewriting was $10, and photography required a $40 scholarship. However, in 1891 there was a lawsuit which said somewhat of the school's operations. Apparently, N.E.W. Stokely and J.H. Cogburn, who were two original professors, got into an argument and the school split in two, and they each took their favorite students with them, and they had classes at the college, and they had classes in downtown Acworth, and that they ended up suing each other trying to reunite the school. Stokely would leave town in 1891, came back in 1893. After Stokely's departure, there are very few references to it, and the last reference to this normal school is September 28th of 1893 in the Meredith Journal, when it was said that several people attending this normal school are sending their kids to the Acworth Academy. However, in late 1893, it was briefly resurrected. There was a normal and business school started in that year. It seems to not be the same institution, uses a different name, but also N.E.W. Stokely. According to the October 20th, 1893 Cherokee Advance, which is a paper from Canton, board cost $9.50 a month, and covered very similar topics to that independent normal school. They also taught a course of bookkeeping that was set in the Washington, Kentucky style, which I'd love to know what that was. Another article from 1892 said tuition was $25, later raised to $33. In 1894, there was a reference made in a paper in August to the school, but after that, there's no more mentioned. It seems to have been very, very briefly lived. According to the Carey Dyer book, this house was the home of the normal school, along with a few other neighboring houses now demolished. I haven't been able to search in deed records yet to verify this, but for now I'm taking a look at it. If you go to that area, you'll find the Mineral Well Historic sign, which talks a bit about that mineral well which was there. It's now just a bench, but also a little bit of information about the school itself. One very familiar school, the Eli Whitney School. I was actually an hour ago eating a JD barbecue, and I spilled Brunswick stew on myself. But the school was founded in 1922. Toccoa Drive, Clarkdale Drive, Albany Drive, and Thomasville Drive were all once like a workers' village owned by the Acworth Mills. The mill was founded in 1905. By 1916, it was said to be one of the best mills in the state, which made this be grandstanding, as every mill seems to say they were the best in the state. The plant was located along the railroad tracks and expanded in size in 1919. There was a massive, mill village in that area with like a mill pipe, stuff like that. In 1922, the company was bought by two sisters from Connecticut, and they began adding in other amenities, including two churches and the school. The school itself was built in 1928 and named after cotton gin inventor Eli Whitney. It was a cotton mill, it's been named after the father of cotton gin. The school was built with educational benefit of children of mill employees. Notably, in 1938, it was also home to Kennesaw students. In that year, down in Kennesaw, we had a fire in our school. The whole school burned down. We sent it all across North Cobb, including the Eli Whitney School. I think it might be the only time it was actually used by public school children. The rest would have been all middle. The Eli Whitney School closed in 1949, but we have some photos of it, which are dated after that. It seems to have been like a community center of sorts, kind of like this building itself was used for use. As of 2025, I should say, it is a home of JD's barbecue. Here's a great photo of the inside. This is one of the few photos we have of an interior of a school building in Acworth that's not the old Acworth, the Acworth school we'll talk about in just a moment. I just really like the photo. And here's another good one showing the exterior. I think this is after it closed. It doesn't have a school sign anymore. In addition, I'm going to spot like these historic parks, but a lot of effort into those. There's an Acworth Mill Village sign at the corner of Cowan Road and Main Street, which has information both about the Mill Village itself and also the school. Next up is Rosenwald School, where we are right now. You've probably seen this one before. Acworth education in African American education in Acworth is largely a mystery before 1924. I am very indebted to Patrice Shelton Lassiter's book, A Place to Remember, for information that is available. She has a lot of great documentation about early African American history in Acworth. She records that before there were public schools for black students, who were educated at Zion Baptist, down that way, and Bethel AME, right behind us. The first 4 black public schools were named Tapping Branch, Poplar Springs, Union Hill, and the Acworth School. I'm not quite sure what areas those first 3 served, but the Acworth School definitely would have been downtown. This final school is believed to date from the 1890s. It was lost in a fire in the 1920s. In 1924, using money from the Rosenwald Fund, it was replaced by the community. Rosenwald Fund was founded by Julius Rosenwald, a Susan Roebuck executive, and who created this fund to basically help sponsor African education across the South, and eventually across the nation in general. The way the Rosenwald Fund worked is that they would give matching money to communities. So this Acworth itself would have had to have raised money. According to newspaper accounts, in 1924, they raised about $1,000 for this school and got a $1,000 matching grant from the Rosenwald Fund. This building here would serve the community in the 1950s. It was originally located behind the Acworth Christian Church, where Bramlett School is today, and was moved to this location where it is now in 1953. Based off the Rosenwald School plans, as they all used a very standard, very similar looking plan, the building was rotated. And Tim Houston has talked about this before, that this side of the building behind us was actually the front, and that was the back. There's one photo of it, I don't seem to have it in here actually, but we can see that pretty clearly. One great feature of the building is, of course, these massive natural lights, the massive windows, which would have, in an era before a lot of electricity, would have served to do a lot. One thing the Rosenwald School's buildings were also known for is they didn't have a lot of ornamentation to them. You won't see any, very big, grand, like marble or brick Rosenwald buildings, and they didn't want to attract a lot of attention. There have been some issues with African American education in the 20s where schools just got burned down by arsonists. People didn't like the idea of black education. Wanted to keep these pretty low key, and that's what they did with, you can see, with this building and with many others across the South. There are today around 20 or so across the state of Georgia, which still stand. Some are preserved, some are not. There's a great example up in Cassville, the Noble Hill Willow School, which is a great museum. There's one off in Hiram, and the Eleanor Roosevelt School, which is the only brick Rosenwald school, is currently being restored down in Warm Springs. This building itself, after it was done being used as a school, served a community center and event space. You can see it pretty clearly in this photo. And then has been restored several times over the years. In 2000, it was almost demolished, but was saved. Again, thanks to Tim Houston. I have to give him a lot of credit there. And it's been restored a couple times since then, most recently in 2023. Following the Rosenwald School came the Bramlett School. Topic of our next section. In 1943, local resident Private Norman Roberts was the first African-American soldier from Cobb County killed in World War II. He was in North Africa when he was killed. 5 years later, in 1948, his body came back to Georgia to a U.S. National Cemetery. And the next year, the Cobb County Board of Education approved a new school for Acworth named after Private Roberts. His father was very big in this area, in the African-American community, and evidently pushed for a school to be created. So it was partly named, seemingly in honor of the father as well. In 1953, when Rosenwald School was moved from right behind the Christian Church to where we are right now, construction began on that new Bramlett School. The new structure was designed with 5 classrooms and an auditorium. The whole building could save about 125 to 150 students at a time. It opened sometime before 1956. I don't have an exact date, unfortunately. And would serve African-American elementary age students in both Acworth and Kennesaw. At the time, there was no black high school in Cobb County. No high school students at that school. In 1961, 2 more rooms were added to the end of it, and when Cobb County schools were integrated, students from Bramlett School began attending Acworth Elementary. The school closed in 1968, used by the county for storage for many years. This photo shows the auditorium on the side, which still looks a lot like this today. Very nice space. And this shows the exterior today. Over the next 30 years, it served a variety of purposes. It was owned by the city of Acworth. In the 70s, it was a health center. The 90s was the streets department. It was storage space for many years. In 2000, Tim Houston led an effort to preserve it and became a community center and has been ever since. Acworth is very lucky to have not one of the 2 historic African-American schools. There's not school buildings. There's not a lot of cities in Georgia that can claim that. It's very interesting to have both very well preserved. And gotta put a plug for the storyboard that's out there. This is on the fence right outside. It talks both about the Bramlett School itself and also the Rosenwald School building. That photo I said I really should have thought to add into this presentation is this one up here, where you can see the little alcove where the teacher's office would have been, which I believe is this side of the building behind me. So heading back to the main Acworth High School, we'll be talking about the Hannah Women's School and eventually Acworth High. They kind of bleed into each other. In 1935, using funds from New Deal's Works in Progress Administration, a new building was constructed next to the older Smith Lemon Institute. It was named the Hannah M. Lemon Addition in honor of Smith Lemon's widow. She was born Hannah Melissa Chastain in 1832 and married Smith Lemon sometime between 1860 and 1870. I can't find them together in the 1860 census, and I know they were married in the 1870 census, but the marriage record seems to have been lost, or just not put online yet. Hannah and Smith would have 4 children together, but only one named Martha survived into adulthood. She actually passed away before her mother. Smith Lemon died in 1889, leaving Hannah a widow. She attended a Baptist church, was well loved at that church. Even up until the 60s, they had a club named after her. She donated money for a pastorium at the church in 1901, and when she died, left money to the Acworth schools, along with Emily, to fund a seminary scholarship. Using funds left over from when she died about 1912, the Hannah Women's School was privately built. It wasn't quite enough money to fund a full school building, which is why they had to wait about 20 years. In 1951, the original Smith Lemon Institute building was torn down, the one I had photos of earlier, to make way for a new grammar school, became the Acworth Elementary School. With the opening of North Cobb High School in 1958, the Acworth High School was closed. This is another photo of the Hannah Women's School building, again built off the WPA in the 1930s. This isn't a school building photo, but it is a fantastic just school trip photo. Not as much connected to this building history, I just like the picture. This is a gymnasium. I don't have an exact date of when this was built. I think the late 40s, early 50s. One of you all might know better than me. This is the Hannah Lemon building on the left. On the right is the gymnasium. And I think it's in this gymnasium lot where the Smith Lemon building was located. So after that, it sort of became Acworth Elementary. This is where they sort of bleed into each other, like I said. But Acworth Elementary School would remain inside the 1935 building after the high school students moved out until 2001, when it moved to New McKelvey Road. The 1935 school was torn down before McCall Primary School was built on site in 2005. The school is named after Dr. Moses McCall and his wife, former Mayor Mary Bolton McCall. Mary McCall was born in Griffin, Georgia in 1915, graduate of Betsy Tift College, which is now, it's the city of Forsyth. It's now, I think, a state office building. She taught high school English, so she was a teacher in this area, and married Dr. Moses McCall in 1937. Moved to Acworth in 1940, and raised 6 children. In 1954, she was elected Acworth's first female mayor, which is very early, even one of the first in Cobb County. She served from 1956 to 1961, so it's in 54 to 56, 61 to 66. And remained very active in the community, but suffered health problems late 60s and 70s, which led her to step back from local politics. She died in 1984, was buried at Liberty Hill Cemetery. And we are hoping to have a presentation with more information about her next year, so keep an eye out for that. One recent addition to the Save Acworth collection is the Butch Price photo collection. The former principal of Acworth Elementary, Butch Price, who I know we all know, gave a fantastic set of photos from the school's history. These cover the 1960-61 school year up until, I think, 2003-2004. There is one book for every year with photos of every student who was at that school during that time. It is a fantastic collection. We are working on scanning them. We have 17 books done. We have about 20-something left to go. Making some good headway with it, though. My goal, at least, is to get these online and make them freely available on the Save Acworth website. In addition, with Butch Price, we have the Tom Scott World History interviews. Butch Price was one elementary school teacher because, like I said, we all know him. I don't want to get too much into that. That's just repeating info. But he does have a wonderful world history interview done by Dr. Scott on my Save Acworth YouTube page. As was discussed at the last meeting, he was originally from Alabama, and there was a number of Alabama teachers who came over. It was him, it was with Nettles, and the Hamiltons. Can't believe I almost forgot to name both. Jeez. This gives Harry Nettles' world history interview. We ought to do one with Gail. She was a lot of fun at that event. I didn't see one on the YouTube page with her. Next up was North Cobb High School. North Cobb High School really began the process in the 1950s. The Cobb County Board of Education began to discuss consolidating the county high schools. Evidently, at that point in 1950, the plan was not to actually close Acworth High School, but instead to close the middle schools, along with Kennesaw, and merge all of them together. By the mid-50s, that plan had changed so that the Acworth High School and the Kennesaw students would all end up in one place together. The new building was designed by Bothwell and Nash and included 16 classrooms, a lunchroom, a cafeteria, and a gymnasium. And the hope was that it could accommodate about 500 to 600 students. The gymnasium, however, would actually take a little bit longer to build. It wasn't quite ready at opening. But there was hope for a football field. It was not included in the original proposal. They evidently had to fundraise for that. The county didn't pay for it. Construction began in 1950s, December of 57, which is started the 58-59 school year. After the school opened, Acworth High School became solely elementary and middle school. When North Cobb High School opened under Principal T.C. Cantrell, there were 390 students, 55 were seniors, 92 were juniors, 117 sophomores, and 126 freshmen. The cafeteria and gymnasium would be finished by the end of the school year. North Cobb High School is described as the county's newest and most modern high school building, as Marietta Daily Journal. I found one article, and I want to get y'all's opinion on this, from 2019, that said it was in the school newspaper, The Chant. It said the school opened in 1958 as an integrated high school. That's not right, is it? Okay. I figured that was the case, but I wanted to check just to be sure. That felt weird. Athletics has always been an important part of the school's identity since it opened. North Cobb High School boasts around 20 sports today, according to their website, with football being the most popular. They actually had only 7 coaches in their 70-year history. So I think it's pretty impressive. This photo is from one of the first yearbooks and shows, I think that's a gymnasium. I think so. This one shows more of the entrance to the school from that same yearbook.
Well, the gym was on the other end.
Right, that was the cafeteria.
Oh, okay, thank you.
That was cafeteria.
They didn't label a lot of these pictures, so that's very helpful to know. This shows just under construction, more construction. Up top is Mr. Cantrell, the first principal. Mr. Sprayberry up top was the county superintendent at that time. I find it very interesting. This is a weird aside. In the 50s and 60s, there were a lot of county government leaders who actually named stuff after themselves. Mr. Sprayberry named Sprayberry High School after himself. If you get out to McCollum Pikeway, Herbert McCollum was chairman of county commissioners when he named that after himself. I think that's quite bold of him, personally.
So we didn't get to be Sprayberry because he already used that name.
Yeah.
But I do remember some of the people who were actually older than me talking about they were going to be the first senior class, and they wanted and mounted an effort to name North Cobb Kenworth. That was the students' idea. Of course, that didn't fly, but we do have Kenworth Park.
Nice.
You know, they understood.
One question I couldn't answer through newspapers, I didn't find an answer. I'm not saying it's not out there. Why is the mascot the Warriors? The Warriors, the chant. There's a lot of Native American imagery with all that. Was there a reason why, or was it just kind of arbitrary?
You mean Warriors?
Yeah.
Because Acworth had been Indians.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was the original part of Cherokee. Yeah,
Cherokee.
it was the Cherokee Nation too, before that it was the Creeks.
I've been very curious, especially the middle schools and elementary schools, with Altoona High School, the Buccaneers. There's no lake of it. I mean, we have Lake Altoona, but nowhere you find pirates. I don't know about you, but the archery Vikings, we don't have Vikings around here. So I really got interested, where did these mascots come from? It has to be a
Remember,
reason.
Luther was homeschooled.
Yeah.
Well, I heard him say hooty hoo on numerous occasions.
That was when my first year at Acworth when they opened, but it was named Vikings. That was a student vote.
Oh, nice.
There were several, nominations, and that was put up to the students to vote. And
Interesting.
Vikings won.
Oh, very nice. I should say, yeah, with me being homeschooled thing, I realized when putting this together, there's a lot of sort of institutional knowledge that I'm missing. For instance, I had to learn where all the schools are for this and that. So a while back, I was in a program with a bunch of high school students who actually went to a real high school, quote unquote. And they seemed to tell you like what every little school across the county was. And I had no clue. It's been a real learning process for me with all this. One of those great oral history interviews that we talked about earlier is class of 71, including our own Alan Kemp and Kurt Johnson. I unfortunately couldn't make it today, but we have Kurt here.
Looked like you could beat up.
You want to know?
So,
Is that why you're sitting over there?
Big for the frying pan.
So Altoona High School is a relatively new school, so there's much less to say about its history. What I did find interesting, however, is actually the history behind the name. It opened in 2008 and was named after Lake Altoona, of course, a pretty obvious one. However, many other names are actually proposed for it. In 2006, a naming committee was formed for this and Pickett's Mill Elementary, which were built at the same time. The committee looked at Altoona High School, Lake Acworth High School, and Lake City High School, and actually selected Lake City High School and Pinecrest Elementary for the elementary school. Has the Board of Education actually overturned this vote, saying they liked Altoona High School and Pickett's Mill High School better. Both would eventually be named that. Altoona High School opened in August of 2008 with 850 students. Here's just a nice photo of the exterior of it. So this final part of the presentation is going through a lot of more recent schools, kind of like Altoona High School. Because of this, I'm just going to kind of go through almost rapid fire style and have, here's the school name, here's where it came from, here's when it opened. It's not a huge amount of info, but there's not as much to share. The first one of these is J. Milton Lewis Elementary School, named after a former school administrator who retired in 1973. Other school names considered were Marysville Elementary and Sequoia Elementary School, after Sequoia, the Cherokee Soul Baby. The school opened at the start of the 86-87 school year. Baker Elementary School opened in 1988, but due to construction delays, couldn't actually open inside this building at that time. They had to wait a few weeks to open. Apparently they were in just like a number of smaller schools and churches for the first few weeks. It was really a very standard plan at that time. It was also used for several schools across the county. It was kind of cookie cutter in the 80s. The school is officially named George Stephen Baker Elementary School, and out of a farmer who owned the land from the early 90s into the 1900s until 1949. According to an interview given by Steve Prather in the 1990s, one of his sons worked for the railroad and would see a lantern when the train passed to signal that would leave a lantern to signal when the train passed that all was well. Basically to let his parents know on the farm that, all okay. And then George Baker would leave a light bulb out of the porch to signal back. In 1990, 2 years after the school opened, students would paint a mural of this inside the media center, showing all the lights. I don't know if it's still there, however. Opened in 1996, Fry Elementary School takes its name from John Steve Fry Jr., a member of the Cobb County School Board, a native Cobb Countian, and a prominent local businessman and contractor. Notably, he actually owned a portion of a big chicken at the time of his death. He gave land in an old cottage in the city of Kennesaw, the Southern Museum of Civil and Locomotive History back in the 70s. He died just a few years before the school opened. It was named in his honor. He also played a role in getting KSU to where it is. In fact, he owned the land where KSU is now, hence Fryer. Construction began on Pittner Elementary School in 2002. It was ready for the 2003 school year. It was named for Herman Pittner, former member of the Acworth City Council, and member of the Board of Education from 52 to 65. When the school was named, his influential role in supporting the construction of Kennesaw Junior College, now KSU, was cited. Shortly before it opened, his widow, Louise, was able to tour the school, and she passed away about 2 or 3 years later. As mentioned earlier, Pickett's Mill Elementary School was not going to be called this originally. It was opened in 2008 and was almost called Pinecrest Elementary School. It's named after the Battle of Pickett's Mill of May 27, 1864. The battle, which technically took place in Paulding County, was a major blow to the Union Army. Enough so that Ambrose Bierce, a noted Civil War author of that day, wrote a whole famous article about it called Crime at Pickett's Mill. Bierce is best known for an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, later made into a Twilight Zone episode. It's owned like the father of the American twist ending. So with middle schools, kind of same idea. Oldest one is Archery Junior High School, opened in September of 65. one of several junior highs built about the same time adjacent to existing high schools, or vice versa. It was evidently a pretty novel thing at the time to have a high school and another school put next to each other, as they had to have some articles in the MDJ like explaining it to people that I think this will help things, this will be fun. Bernard Archie, who it's named for, was an early Acworth educator, as early as the 1890s, who worked at the Smith Women's School. He also was the very first elected countywide school superintendent, and was also a newspaper publisher down in Marietta. He published an MDJ rival. The Archie House, which is now demolished, was across the street from the Acworth School downtown. Archie Junior High School became Archie Middle School in 1971. Durham Middle School was built on land owned by the Durham family at 1830s Cherokee Land Waterloo. In the 1990s, the Durham family sold the land to Cobb County School District, who built Fry Elementary on the site in 1996, and Durham Middle School in 2000. Just this May, we celebrated the 25th anniversary alongside local resident and Dave Acworth supporter Jimmy Durham. We tried to find a photo of him to include. He also has an oral history. I have not hyped those enough. The newest addition is Murray F. Bible Middle School, opened in 2005. Bible was a longtime teacher in Cobb County and was killed by lung cancer in 2000 at the age of 63. He was known for his support of Cobb County's middle schools in particular, and seems a clear and logical choice of a namesake when it came time to name the school. The only private school I'll be covering in this final part of the presentation is North Cobb Christian School, because it is quite big, quite large. North Cobb Christian School was traded in 1983 by 4 families and has since grown to an enrollment of over 1,250. After originally meeting at a church in Marietta, they moved to their current location in 1989. At that time, the school expanded from elementary to middle school, and they added in high school students in 1997. Their first senior class was the class of 2000. Their website is a fantastic timeline of their school history. These schools I just talked about, elementary and middle schools, sometimes they have a bit, sometimes you kind of have to figure it out on your own. North Cobb has a great timeline. I have to give them a lot of credit there. We do have an oral history collection on Perry Kemp, founder of the school. The final thing I want to cover is the yearbooks. State Acworth has a very large collection of yearbooks right now, and we are always looking for more. These following slides have a list of what we do have. If you have any that are not on here, and you're willing to give them to us, please let us know. We would love to add to the collection. Acworth High School, we have a pretty good run of 45 books. Well, I won't be through it all. That'd be pretty boring after a while.
Is this what we have or what we need?
This is what we have. We have a very nice collection of North Cobb High School, particularly from the 90s onwards. Some of those earlier years, the 70s and 80s in particular, I'd like to find a lot more of. I'm guessing, would there have been a 50s yearbook? Since the first graduating class was 61, right? No, it would have been class. I guess it would have been the first to have all 4 years there, but yeah, they would have had a class of 58 because of the merger. So I'd love to find some of those early 50s yearbooks. Altoona High School, we have almost a complete run of, thanks to one of their shop teachers, whose name is escaping me at the moment. That's going to drive me nuts later. Archie Middle School, we also have a pretty good run of from the 70s and 80s. For the middle schools especially, I'd love to expand, since we really only have archery. We also have one Sprayberry High School. I don't think any Acworth students attended Sprayberry. We did have Kennesaw students who did, but it's a good yearbook example. If anyone is familiar with, like I said, if you have any yearbooks anywhere, if you find an antique mall, have any personal collection, we would love to have it. So with that, we've reached the end of the story of Acworth education. Like I said at the start, there are many more stories that could be shared. If you have anything you'd love to share, any favorite teachers, favorite memories, really anything, now is a great time to do so. But are there any questions? Yeah.
Well, sort of a question, but a statement you were expressing when we talked about the normal school, how unusual it would be, seems now in this day and age, that a 10-year-old might be sent off to school. But it reminded me that in Cherokee County at about that time, I had an uncle who told me, or his great uncle, told me about working in the cotton mills when he was really young. And I found him on the census at 11 years old, and his occupation was machine operator.
Wow.
So, they were different children. But,
Yes.
it's sad, isn't it?
It's crazy,
Yeah.
even looking back at like college education, thinking, I was in biography the other day of Alexander Stevens, who was a Georgia governor and a major Confederate, also anti-Confederate. He's an interesting guy. But he was, I think, 13 and 14 and went off to UGA. And like, I just couldn't imagine that. That's crazy to me.
It was probably a kinder campus back then.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Oh.
They still educating us in Melbourne.
Well,
The year that Autry opened, it was at 65, we actually had they were late finishing school. And North Cobb, we had to use North Cobb for a while, and they had North Cobb students went on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and Autry went Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays.
Interesting.
And that went on for about 8 weeks or so.
About, yeah, till November, sometime in November or something.
Yeah, it was actually November before we actually started using the Autry, the new building there.
That's good to know. I never tried it.
So
Oh.
we missed a lot of good Federal football games if we were in the ninth grade.
Wasn't a whole lot of television.
Well, we still had the game of the week. That was all. That was about it.
And I think we should all remember too, that women haven't, all girls haven't always had access to education.
It's true.
And that's really a sad part of our history.
Yeah. I was surprised at that antebellum one that I found, that it was a female teacher from Acworth. I didn't know how that was
teachers
being
going
handled
up there
back
were
then.
female, until we got up in high school, so. Great, anymore.
Well, thank y'all for coming out.
Thank you.